Hi, this is Rabbi Moshe Rothschild from the Israel Alliance, bringing you summary of the news from Israel for week ending January 21st, 2021. And we do all the hard work for you. We read the paper, we watch the news, and we summarize. We bring you all the top stories that happened this week in Israel. So let's go. This week, a non-Jewish congressman announced that he will take a sabbatical from social media. No surprise there. But what the surprise story is that this is a result of his spending a Sabbath in Israel. This is Representative Chip Roy, a Republican from Texas, said he's taking an indefinite leave of absence after experiencing a Sabbath, what it's like here in the Holy Land of Israel. He announced this in a Wall Street Journal op-ed. The IDF, the Israel Defense Forces, is preparing a new operational plan to deal with Iran's nuclear threat. We don't know what's going to happen now with the Iran deal with the new Biden administration. So the IDF is working hard on three separate plans that they will present to the government of Israel. Israel this week on Tuesday announced that they will provide free of cost vaccines to Holocaust survivors globally. This is really an incredible, beautiful initiative. If you're just joining us, put your name down below, say where you're from, anything you'd like to say, I'd love to hear from you. This week as well, Netanyahu met with an Arab mayor of the town of Nazareth, and the Arab mayor of Nazareth said that he will support Netanyahu in the Israeli election, that of course is going to take place in March. The Arab mayor of Nazareth, Ali Salam, was told by the Likud that he will also be given a slot. He will be given a seat in the Knesset as a Likud representative. Mike Pompeo, again, we're now, this week was the end of the Trump administration. Mike Pompeo, the Secretary of State, he quoted and said, Kerry said it couldn't happen, but we did it. And he was referring to the Israel-Arab peace deals, of course, the Abraham Accords that were very successfully signed during the Trump administration. There is a source in the Biden administration has said that they will consult with Israel before they re-enter any of the nuclear deal with Iran. I sure hope they don't just consult. I hope they listen to whatever Israel tells them, because remember, Israel really knows what's best for its own security. The U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem marking this switch from David Friedman as the ambassador here. There was at a ceremony at the city of David, which is where Jerusalem originally begins, where David makes his capital. The following statement was made that the U.S. recognizes Jerusalem's link to America's founding values. And here's the quote: the archaeological discoveries at the city of David bring biblical Jerusalem back to life and reaffirm the prophetic messages of freedom, justice, and peace that inspired America's founders. Beautiful. Israeli wine and oil are flowing from Israel to the United Arab Emirates as part of the peace agreement. You can now drink Israeli wine and use Israeli oil in the United Arab Emirates. There were massive rainfalls this week in Israel, which is amazing. Remember, we have a rainy season that extends from Sukkot, Tabernacles, to Passover, basically around October-ish to April. And if we don't get rain, it leaves us with an extremely dry and dangerous summer. So thank God, massive rainfalls this week. Israeli corona cases spiked to over 10,000 in one day, which was the highest single day record. But don't worry, we'll have some good news in a minute. Back to Congresswoman Tlaib, who's the Democratic representative she's a congresswoman from Michigan. She attacked Israel, claiming that Israel is a racist state. Why? Because we're not providing enough vaccines to the Palestinian Authority. Now, you can't have it both ways, folks. The Palestinian Authority controls their own health care. If they want to spend their money in paying salaries to terrorists and they don't have enough money to buy vaccines, they can't come to Israel if they sign an agreement that they want independence. So they have healthcare independence. They can't rely on Israel for the healthcare. So you can't have it both ways, folks. Good news about the coronavirus, the reproductive rate in Israel fell below 1. What does that mean? It means that for the first time in over a month and a half, that if one person gets infected, they will infect on average less than one other person. How do you get less than one person? That's a good question. But they can infect less than one person. That's very good news. Israel has also now vaccinated 3 million of its citizenry. That's 30, more than 30%. The US Ambassador David Friedman to Israel bid farewell. And just as when he arrived here, he went to the Western Wall, as he left, his last act as ambassador was to pray at the Western Wall. So, as a final message, I just want to tell you we are planning an Israel trip next year, March of 2022. If you're interested, put your name below. You can put your email, send a message, and we'll be happy to get in touch with you. 2022, it's going to be an amazing trip, guided by yours truly, a licensed guide here in Israel. Have a great Shabbat, a great weekend. To